Welcome to the New Money Habits podcast, where we talk about how to create a better plan for your money so you don't have to live paycheck to paycheck. Here are your hosts, Sarah Jones and Nino Villa.
Welcome back, Budgeteers. Coach Nino Villa here alongside me, my partner on the airways. It's Sarah Jones. Sarah, how are you? And where are you?
Hello, everyone. Hey, Nino. I am doing really pretty good today. We are in Georgia, kind of halfway in between Savannah, Georgia, and St. Augustine, Florida. So right on the coast. We're only about 10 miles from the coast. We've been hitting beaches, gosh darn, as much as possible because where we're headed next, we won't be having beaches. So trying to get our fill of them.
All right. And where are you headed next?
Oh, kind of central Tennessee.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So definitely get that beach time in while you can, because, there might be some lakes or something, but you're not going to be anywhere near an ocean.
Nope. Looking forward to meeting a bunch of new little creatures in Tennessee, but getting my fill of the ocean creatures, and boy, have we seen some crazy new ones. So that it's been really exciting, actually, for us this go round.
Very cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about what we want to talk about today. We're going to we have not coined this term, but we're going to coin a new term for our listeners. We're going to talk a little bit about having coinversations. Yes, you did just hear that right. I infused the word coin with the word conversation, coinversations. We'll talk about what those are in just a moment, but I don't want our listeners to miss out on a valuable financial insights that we offer on the podcast weekly. So subscribe to the New Money Habits podcast today to unlock a wealth of knowledge to empower your financial journey. Stay up to date with the latest episodes as Sarah and I discuss practical tips, as we host expert guests and have thought-provoking discussions on all things money-related. Hit that subscribe button now and join our community of savvy listeners. Also want to remind you to take advantage of your free discovery call. It's time to take your financial growth to the next level. So schedule a free discovery call with Sarah or myself today. And during your personalized session, we'll discuss your specific financial goals, gain clarity on your challenges, explore how working with a financial coach can accelerate your progress, and much more. Don't miss out on this valuable opportunity. Book your free discovery call now and create the new money habits needed to achieve financial freedom. All right, Sarah. So let's start off by talking a little bit about what is a coinversation.
Well, I think there's a lot of terms for it. Budget talks, money conversations. A lot of people call them budgeting meetings. Lots of different terms for them, but basically it's just you sitting down with your partner, your spouse, maybe an accountability partner, and talking money, all things money.
Yeah, it's a fun little term, but it really is that straightforward. A coinversation is just a conversation between you and whoever you need to have that conversation with about all things related to income, outgo, debt elimination, all of it. So it's really just having a conversation about your money, which you and I have discussed plenty of times on the podcast. This is very taboo and very weird for a lot of people, except our listeners. Our listeners by now are probably having coinversations all the time and didn't even know it. So my next question would be, what should be a part, or I'm sorry, not what, who should be a part of these coinversations? You kind of just alluded to it a little bit, but who should be involved?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it depends on what topics you're wanting to discuss. I think there are, important topics that need to be discussed with, different people. But as a general rule, your spouse or your partner, whoever you're in a committed relationship that maybe you're sharing finances with, maybe it's an accountability partner. I think a coach can be a part of some of these conversations, and I know you have, some of these conversations. I certainly do with my clients. But I don't want your coach to be the only one that you're having these conversations with, right? I think there needs to be some additional people in your life, and maybe your kids, again, depending on their age, who, or what you're trying to talk about, right? Like the topic that you want to convey. So, and I could maybe even throw in here, Nino, that sometimes maybe even a counselor or a therapist, just sharing some of these thoughts. I think it's most important to get it out and start having the conversation. So even if you're in, therapy, sometimes having some of these conversations, sharing it out loud helps you to be able to have a deeper conversation with your partner or your spouse. So that's where I think like a coach can be really beneficial, or a therapist or counselor, to start those conversations too, to get you more comfortable in talking about it. So then you can go to your partner, your spouse, or your kids.
Yeah. And I think you just started to highlight something really important there. And that is, it really depends on what the conversation is about. Money talks can be about a wide variety of things. It could be something as simple as putting together next month's budget. And so that might be a Coinversation that you're having. You might be having a conversation about maybe a change in income or a change in expenses, or both. And so maybe you're in a new season and things, maybe you got a raise. And so things, there's more money to manage. And so you're talking about that. Or maybe on the other side, things are getting a little tighter. And so you're talking about that. And so that might be part of the conversation. You might be talking about how it is that you relate with money. When you're sharing finances, it's very rare that the two people sharing finances view money exactly the same. More often than not, they have some differences of opinion. And so how much in savings is enough in savings might be part of the conversation. Or, well, I like to spend and I want to be able to spend because I work hard for my money. And so you're trying to communicate how you relate with money. And so I love that you also brought up therapists, because if money seems to be an issue inside of a marriage, or some type of cohabitation of commingled funds, well, then being able to talk about the things that are challenging or struggles in a productive and effective way with the person that you must communicate with, that being your spouse or partner, is wildly important. I also like that you brought up kids though, too. So I think about like when my wife and I are sitting down and we're talking about kids and the money that it takes to kind of put them through their activities or whatever the case may be. And there's also a talk about an allowance. It's like, well, wait a minute. Let's bring the children in and let's talk about how they can work for money, and how the money that they work for will then go and pay for some of their activities. And so we have to bring them into that conversation, once we've kind of established the foundation. So it always depends, but there's just a couple of examples of the different players in the Coinversations when necessary.
I love that. And, Nino, it wasn't too long ago that James, my husband, and I had a Coinversation with our kids. We were all together kind of to celebrate a couple of months ago. And during that time, having all four of us together, which doesn't happen very much anymore, only a couple of times a year. But we actually sat down and we went over, what would happen. What are the kids' responsibilities? What do they need to be prepared for if something should happen to James or I, right? And so we had a different type of money conversation with our kids that, should something happen to both of us, then here's what, here's some of our assets. Here's, some things that you guys can be anticipating. Here's our final wishes. Here, those types of conversations, which I am going to bet most people don't have those conversations. And because it was incredibly painful. I talk about money all the time. I'm very comfortable talking about money. having that conversation with my kids about the possibility, or, not the possibility, but should something happen, then what are their responsibilities, right? Then that was incredibly hard to do. It was very emotional. I cried a lot, even though I had planned for it. So I don't want to come across that, all of your conversations are just going to be happy and great, but they are necessary. And so, to your point, our money conversations can be around, from A to Z, right? In the money scheme, and they are all very, very important to have, regardless if they're easy or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very true. And it actually kind of leads me to my next question. So when should you have Coinversations?
Well, I actually suggest to all of my clients to schedule weekly meetings. Because most of my clients are not communicating well when it comes to money. And so I start off with weekly meetings, and they might be only 5 or 10 minutes long, right? But it's getting into that habit and it's building up. I think there's some different, could do it around pay periods, as you start talking about money more. My husband and I, we don't necessarily have meetings anymore because we talk about money so freely that we don't plan it anymore. It's just a natural part of our everyday lives. I will tell you, Nino, we used to, when we were getting into this, we used to plan our budget meetings every 2 weeks around his paydays. And it used to go into our calendars. We wanted to make sure that if we said it was important, we were making it important and we were putting it on the calendar, and so that was really helpful for us to schedule it at a time where we knew we were getting paid. We knew that we were kind of checking in some numbers. At that time, we were working on communicating better. And so we held our questions or kept our thoughts, until those meetings. And we made it fun.
I like that. I have to share that recently. So my calendar fills up, and there's plenty of things to do and clients to meet with and that sort of thing. That just recently, Christina and I made the commitment that every other Sunday at 11 a.m. she's on the calendar. My most important financial client is on the calendar. Like you said, we speak about money freely, but sometimes I'm so kind of just busy or preoccupied. And I've noticed that. So when I execute the budget and I pay the bills, that happens on Friday. Well, on that Friday, I don't respond well. I'm just going to be candid and honest. I don't respond well when we've already created a plan. I'm in the midst of executing the plan, and now you want to talk about other things that need to happen. So I'm all like, I need a day or two to let kind of the execution of Friday happen. And then we can kind of re-engage on Sunday when those things have transpired. And now we can kind of talk about what else needs to happen. So I just found that with everything that's going on, I wanted to put my most important financial client on the calendar to give that space so that I'm also in the right mindset, because I don't want to go into a conversation with the wrong attitude or hostile in any way. But when I'm executing the budget, I'm not real thrilled. I mean, I love that I have a plan. I'm incredibly blessed to have the resources needed to pay our bills. But paying our bills is not fun for me. I don't necessarily like handing over hundreds of dollars to this company or that company or whatever, right? So I need a day. I just need a day. Let that all settle, and then I can kind of re-engage with, okay, what else needs to take place?
Can we just highlight that for a second, that even though we talk about money and, we are involved, it doesn't mean that we enjoy every part of this money journey, right? We don't, I do not just like you, I do not enjoy sending my money away to other people. That's not something that's enjoyable to me. I do it because I know it allows me to get to the places that I want to go. It allows us to reach these new milestones, but it's not enjoyable. And so I just want to highlight that for people out there, because if you're thinking, gosh, I don't like this, you're not meant to like every part of it. It's okay, right? Like, it's okay to not enjoy it. Doesn't mean that it can't be necessary. And it doesn't mean that it can't also have other pieces of it that are enjoyable.
Yeah. And you used the word fun earlier. You said make them fun. So how do you make one of these conversations or these money talks fun?
Well, I came up with some of these tips, Nino, because what I found within my own life and also with a lot of my clients is that when you're trying to have conversations, you alluded to it a minute ago, that you're maybe not in the right mind frame, right, to have this conversation. Sometimes we bring a lot of stress. When we try and have conversations, a lot of times past conversations and the hurts and the tears and the yelling and the disagreements and all of that immediately comes into the new one. It's really hard to create something new because when, just from experience, people try and have these conversations at the wrong times, right? And so making them fun and choosing a time, as you and Christina are doing, that works much better, very important, right? But make them fun. And so it's not this, oh, we got to talk about money. Oh, we got to talk about paying bills. No, let's make it fun. And I'm just going to be bold and say that James and I used to schedule sex afterwards because you got to. Well, you know what? Because it's not something he could look forward to that. He did not look forward to the budget meeting. And so
that's right.
I'm keeping it real.
He was on his best behavior for that 15 minutes, that 30, whatever that talk, however long that talk lasted, he was on his best behavior.
He was. And you know what? It worked, right? It worked. And because what it did, Nino, is it brought some fun. It brought something that you could look forward to. And I think that that's a piece that so many people are missing when they go to have these conversations. So schedule something, have a couple of drinks, sit outside, take it out of the house, go and grab a coffee at a coffee shop, right? Change your environment a little bit. I say, glass of wine and some cheese, or, do something different, make it almost like a date night, something that, dress up, put a new, costume on, do something to change it up so it feels exciting going into it.
Yeah, I was just thinking too about how you said, you and James are getting as much beach time in as possible right now. Like, how about just lounging in a couple of chairs on the beach, talking about your financial situation and whatnot. At least listening to like those waves just kind of crash in, and just what a serene experience. So for sure, there are definitely different ways to change it up so that not that you'll necessarily look forward to it, but that you won't dread having this important conversation. And we were talking a moment ago too about when should you have these. And so you had mentioned kind of around each pay period. I would say at bare minimum, everybody should be talking at least once a month, at the bare minimum, so that you're planning each month. But yes, around paydays, when you're going to travel, I imagine, for you and James, that's like all the time because you're traveling all the time. But, for us regular old folks who just live in a house somewhere, when we're planning travel, that might be a separate, different conversation than like the normal budgeting conversation, right? Like, hey, let's talk about, when are we leaving? When are we coming back? So how many days are we going to be gone? What do we want our food budget to be while we're out and about? So like whether it's traveling or even something similar for the end of the year and the holiday season, like Thanksgiving, what are we doing? Are we going somewhere? Do we want to bring something? Are we hosting? And what does that look like? At Christmas, what are we doing? So there's definitely plenty of times and plenty of different events and whatnot that should encourage you to have one of these coinversations as we're talking about today.
Absolutely. And think about too, Nino, you and I were kind of talking, before we hit record, but if your kids are in sports or extracurricular activities, having that conversation, what times of year are these things going to happen? How are we going to prepare for them? How much lead time do we need? Who's the person that writes the budget, and puts this together? How much time do you need to make sure that there's money in those accounts and that's funded so the kids can be in sports, right? These are all conversations that warrant time. They warrant your time. And, you said it too, calling Christina your most important client. It really is your money and the relationship with your spouse and money, I believe, needs to fall at the top of your to-do list, right? And if you're getting up and you're going to work and you're frustrated, then listen, put the money conversations, put those up there top. Number one, these are most important because you can alleviate, I believe, because I've seen it, right? Alleviate so much of the stress that you're incurring at work because you know what your choices are. You know what, if you want to look for another job, right, what your requirements are for going because you've already had the conversations. You know what it requires to take care of your family, right? And it needs to be up there. And I'm going to be bold too here and say, quit sweeping it under the rug. I just see so many people kind of sweeping the money and these conversations kind of putting it under the rug, like, oh, I'll handle it tomorrow. I'll handle it. You know what? Tomorrow is not going to happen. You need to do it today.
Yeah. Yep. So I think that also leads to another important question about, so how do I start? If I'm not going to sweep it under the rug, how do I start a conversation, a money talk with my spouse or accountability partner?
So I've come up with a couple of questions, different things to kind of start these conversations because, again, they can be really difficult to have, especially if you've tried to have them in the past and unknowingly you tried to have them at the wrong time. You were too stressed out. There's tears, there's arguing, there's, you're not on the same page. And so let's start the conversations a little bit differently. And so one question that I suggest that you kind of start off you don't have to start off with it, but what do you really like spending money on? Like actually ask your partner, what do you enjoy spending money on? This falls in, to kind of our values categories, right? This leads into what you actually value spending. And I just say, tell me why that is so I can understand where you're coming from more, right? Part of having these conversations isn't just to talk, but it's to really listen and to learn to understand our partners differently. So that's a really great one. I say, which of these are you good at or not good at? And then I kind of go through a list, are you good or not good at saving? Are you good or not good at investing? Good or not good at giving? Managing, spending, creating money, right? So having these, and because, James will tell you he was very good at spending money, right? Even though I saved, I wasn't good at saving. I was doing it from a really unhealthy place. So that didn't mean that I was really good at it, right? And so what do you actually feel you're really good at and not good at? That gives you a great place to have more conversation. Okay, now where do we learn, right? Now we can look at, okay, do we need to find a book on investing, right? If neither one of us are good at investing, maybe that's the area that we really focus on, right? So it just gives you some places to go farther. What do you love about money and what do you hate about money? So asking your partner those two questions and just asking them to explain it, not for judgment, but just to listen to what they're saying. What are your strengths when it comes to money? And what do you believe mine are? Right? Ask them what they see in you, and you can tell them, here's where I see your strengths are. And then we use those strengths together to improve the situation, right? I think so much of the time we don't rely on each other's strengths here. And I think that that's a really important piece.
Yeah. You got me thinking, because I love those questions. I love the idea of seeking to understand. So sitting down across the table from my wife, I love asking questions to seek to understand, to listen, and to learn more. Being married 14 years, I think I already know, right? I could probably anticipate, but there's something very beautiful about just doing the activity anyway, because you may learn something new or different, or gain a little bit more perspective that you didn't have before. So I'm going to steal a couple of those, and I'm going to go and I'm going to ask Christina what her strength in managing money is, and I'm going to ask her what she thinks my strength is, so that we can then leverage one another's strengths together. I love it.
Well, steal away. I'll send them to you. You don't have to steal them. I'll even give them to you.
Awesome.
And to all of our listeners, really, go back and re-listen to this part, right? Pause and write these questions down, because I think that they're really valuable. And I didn't come up with these just to throw something out. There's value behind each of these questions, so you can really learn something more about yourself and your partner, which will 100% guarantee you're going to start feeling better about your money situation, because you start to understand where they're coming from more. It goes so much deeper into just the dollars and cents of stuff.
For sure. All right. And I think you've given a couple of tips, but I want to see if there are any other tips you have for our listeners about making these Coinversations successful.
Well, we can, kind of just even list out, in a list of how to make them successful. One is planning them, planning them in a time that you are not just in the midst of paying bills, right? Not in the heat of the moment, but taking time to put them on the schedule and planning them out for, that each of you can come to the conversation prepared and ready to have it. Getting rid of those other stressors in life, so really taking the time to look at your calendar to see when that's going to be important. Make them fun. I think that that's a big piece of this, is really making them fun. Have something to look forward to, make them like a date night, make them enjoyable as much as possible. Again, the conversation itself might not necessarily be super enjoyable, but there can be pieces of the activity that are, kind of keep them light. I think money tends to weigh really heavily on people, and I'd say kind of make it light. And by that, I mean, don't try and solve all your problems in one night, right? Pick maybe one area or maybe one piece of the puzzle, one of those questions to have at a, to kind of go through at a time. Don't try and solve everything at once, because that's going to make the conversation feel really heavy. So break it up. You don't have to take care of it all at one conversation. And again, I think most importantly is really listen to each other. Go into this without judgment. Pull your judgment out. Try and put all those past conversations that you've had, try and put those in the past, because now you're starting something new. You're approaching it with a new mindset. You're approaching it with, wanting different outcomes. So you have to approach it differently than you have. And so, really go into it with the idea that you're just going to listen to what your partner has to say.
Awesome. I think those are really good tips. And thank you for sharing those. I think this has been a great Coinversation in and of itself. We have definitely used that term and kind of bludgeoned it to death. So I hope everybody kind of enjoyed it. We didn't trip over it one time, so I'm really proud of us. But I think it was another great conversation. I really appreciate having it. And as we always do, we'll continue our conversation next time.
Thank you for listening to the New Money Habits podcast, brought to you by New Money Habits and Keeping Up with the Joneses Financial Coaching. Submit your questions to our host by emailing podcast@newmoneyhabits.com. Be sure to subscribe to be notified of future episodes. Join our growing group of like-minded people on Facebook and follow us on your favorite platform. Music provided by Summer School.